So today we are talking about ethical consumption. I'm going to have multiple guests up. We're going to talk about some different aspects of it. I would love to just, get a good conversation going because I think that it's needed around here. This is the first of many, 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 many. Hello, my friend.
Hey, what's going on?
Another fine day. How are you doing?
I'm out here getting this fall planting underway behind schedule. As
Oh, yeah.
always in the agricultural world, but it's a cool day, so I'm loving it.
There's always more to do, right?
Never stops, never ends.
Right on, right on. Well, hello, Off Dragon. How are you doing today?
Good. Sorry, my dad showed up to help with concrete stuff randomly this morning. He has a real bad habit of not calling before he does stuff. He just does it. So I may be a little bit indisposed, but I'll do my best.
That's all right. No worries. No worries. We'll just go ahead and keep you on mute until we have some conversation.
Sounds good.
And Miss
Up to the
Miranda, how are you doing
transplants.
today?
Really, really great. Happy to be a part of the conversation. Nice to see your faces this morning. Timely
Likewise.
coming off of Labor Day to have these conversations about labor and consumption.
Yeah, I thought so too. Till I planned it that way. So today's discussion is exactly on that ethical consumption and the different ways that we can kind of divest from the billionaire class, as Miranda loves to say, and try and keep the economies more local in a way that'll help everybody. So I really appreciate the people who joined me. There are a few more people I'm expecting to come a little bit later, but we'll go ahead and get started with this group. I think first and foremost, the easiest way to get started is to define what ethical consumption is. To me, it just means, that idea of if I'm going to buy a good or product, especially, right now I'm really working with my laundry soaps and my hair care products and all that kind of stuff because I've already found local butchers and stuff. So that's my angle right now. But I'm trying to do something that, if I'm buying a product, I'm putting money into the hands of another human being instead of, letting it leach its way up to the conglomerations that have been top dogs of the game for a while. So that's my kind of realm and idea of ethical consumption. Lawrence, how about we have your ideas of it first?
Yeah, my idea behind ethical consumption is more so being cognizant and intentional about where your stuff comes from, what it does to the ecosystem, what it does to your microeconomy, and being responsible in that factor. And really just taking the step forward to add in your ethics into your consumption, really being honest about it, and trying your best to follow your values and your morals, and me as well as you, like you just stated. I'm trying to, no, we are spending spending our dollars hyper locally, voting with our dollars, supporting our community with our dollars, using Farm First 24/7, and it kind of takes that transparency to the next level because I can know for a fact that I'm giving my money to a person and not a big system that's hiding under cloak as another institution. So that's definitely my roundabout way to practice ethical consuming.
Solid. Absolutely solid. Let's go ahead and go clockwise. Tea and transplants.
So when I think of ethical consumption, I really start to deconstruct what labor looks like and labor practices. I think we're in such a place where people are taken advantage of by corporations, whether it's on that consumer level or on the employment level. And so if we have any say in it, it's in the money that we spend in these institutions. So if we do exactly like Lawrence is saying, and we are providing a means and a living for other people who are not subjugated to being employed by these big conglomerates, that can start to build a life where people have the means to take care of themselves and they're no longer reliant on the employment factor. As well as it ends up, we are getting better quality goods. We are keeping money in our community, and it starts to have this ripple effect when we're really conscious about where we spend our money. And sometimes it costs a little bit extra in the currently, but I think in the meantime, as we have that tipping point and more people start to consume, things will be cheaper. You'll have more opportunity. Maybe there's more money in your pocket because people are purchasing your goods. So that's really where I like to think of ethical consumption as a system, rather than this nebulous idea.
Right on, right on. That's a great way to phrase it for sure. I appreciate those words. And Jordan, off the wagon, if you want to go ahead and jump in with some words.
Yeah. I think that, all those points are really good. I think that ethical consumption is really something that's hard to do in any meaningful way on a personal level because of the way that society, as you're talking about, these big conglomerates and everything, has put us in a position where you can recycle all you want. You can try to be really conscious about where you consume your stuff from. And even if you're excellent at it, you're not really doing a whole lot, which is frustrating. And if you're not hyper vigilant of it, a lot of times you're just buying stuff that you think might be ethical and you have no idea because brands do a really good job at branding like they're local, branding like it's something from your community when it's not. It's just another layer of, a different logo. And so I think that the focus really needs to be on regulating, enforcing antitrust, enforcing community efforts to decentralize our capitalist system. So I think that it's hard to really. It feels good to try to be good about it on a personal level, but unless we can do this on a top-down level, it's throwing sand at the wind. I feel like.
Word, I can see where you're coming from with that, and I would like to say that there are opportunities for people to, there's definitely different levels of it. We do need top-down people like Lena Khan at the FTC is doing some wonderful work, trying to, to be the person on the side of the consumer. So we do have some elements of that, although I do really wish we had more. And on a personal level, I think that there's something to be said about making it a popular idea to shop local and those kinds of things. People need to change their frame of reference or their perspective in a way that it's just it becomes the cool thing to do. The artisan, the butcher shop that's in your local area. It's much more fun to go and give that money to them. And I'll say on a personal level, after finding the local butcher, I'm never going back. The quality of meat is just so much better. And yeah, it might be a little bit pricier, but they do the box deals and things like that. So you can actually get pretty decent prices per serving. And so those options may not be available in every single state, but it's worth looking into because there's going to be some iteration of crop shares or meat shares and that kind of thing because we have such abilities, but having the knowledge of where to go and how to find those things is very, very important, which is one of the reasons why I love these people up here in the box, because they do on their channels, supply different ideas of how to do hyper local type things, whether it be we pick up the stuff and start making our bread or growing our vegetables for ourselves and then start trading them for ourselves. Or if it's just the idea of looking into farmers markets and established, was it meat CSAs, I believe is what they're called. And so these kinds of ideas are ways that in the food lane specifically, we can start to work towards, breaking down the conglomerate chains and start hyper localizing our commitments. But yeah, I think that's a really great way to start this off for sure. What are some of the benefits that we can see, maybe both immediately and long term when we're supporting the people around us? Anybody who has an answer to this, feel free, or I can vamp.
I think.
Go ahead.
Oh. Respect.
Let's go.
I think one of and I'm just gonna go off the subject matter that's typically expressed, which is health and well-being. I think more so. The thing that I feel is most valuable is getting in contact with people who share the same values as you. They're aligned in their spirit and in their understanding of what we're trying to do. So we're building relationships with people. And that's one of those underlying things that's not really talked about when we talk about consumption and choosing to intentionally consume things for this reason. It's literally like a breath of fresh air when you can find the butcher. Not only do you find that fresh meat and it's higher quality, but now you're getting to know a person. You're getting to talk to them about the proceeds that they, and that's where the magic sauce is. That's where the community is built, because it's intentional. And I'm getting to know you. And I think that's one of the things that we've witnessed here in Atlanta, that generational gap has been melting away slowly, because the elders who have the information are starting to be in spatial relativity with the young folks who are looking for the information. And now we're putting them together, and now the old folks can get to talk to people on a weekly basis who really want to hear their stories, and the young people can go and help the elders with laborious tasks that they're maybe out of they're over the hill to complete. So again, this is just like one of those things where just ethically consuming and being conscientious about consumption can lead into more diverse, deep connections.
Right on, man. Jordan, go right ahead.
Oh, I think just like your points that you were making with local butchers and stuff like that, is you might spend a little bit more money, but you're usually getting more product. You know, they're not injecting it with water and all of that to increase weight. And you're obviously supporting people within your community, which is always a great thing. One thing I've noticed that's really easy for me to support local business, because I really like beer, is breweries, local breweries, wineries, things like that. I think that's huge. They seem like they put a lot more effort into local sustainability just as a culture in general. And, it's a really fun way to go about doing that. One of the things I definitely do think is an issue, especially living in rural, Minnesota, is like the options are limited when you do want to support these kinds of things. Like my options are Walmart or Amazon, or I've got to drive a half hour to get, a chain grocery store in Aldi or something like that, which isn't a whole lot better in that sense either. And that's really all of our shopping options here, and that's really been a systematic problem that these big box stores have come in and completely wiped out any local competition. We used to have the local grocery store, and then, they always put it on us, the consumer. Well, you didn't shop there. Well, it's like, I'm sorry, we're all broke. You can't expect people to not shop with their wallet, and not having those protections for that competition in place is what's left us with only one option now.
And I think that's kind of my key when I think about like what is the larger ripple effect. I look at my dollars and my purchases as an investment on what I want the future to look like, because I know the history. I know that Walmart went in and undercut all the local mom and pop shops until they're the only one left. And as we know, as of 2024, they've jacked the prices way up, and they have us in a chokehold, because no longer is Walmart the cheaper, affordable option. You are paying an astronomical amount of money to get ground beef that is 10, 15% cellulose, which is just wood shavings. That's what the FDA allows in people's ground beef, and you're not going to get that at your local farmer. And so people who do have the means, and I think that goes back to what Tripp is saying about making the local butcher cool, is if we can convince the people who have the resources to shop locally, it'll then trickle down to where the local resources are more affordable. And this idea of it being an investment, I think of catastrophic logistic failures like we're seeing right now with the listeria outbreak. When we have a centralized food system, it is so easy for disease to spread. But if we can establish small local producers in Minnesota, Vermont, Georgia, we're all across the United States, and we start to build these systems connecting these smaller towns, we can fight getting these huge disease outbreaks. We can make it more affordable for everybody. So that's kind of the ripple effect that I hope, and why I am on my page shouting out oftentimes, because I hear you. It is expensive and not a lot of people can do it. But then I see people who are heavily resourced spending $300, $400, $500 at a Whole Foods or a Healthy Living, and they're trying to buy this health that Lawrence is exactly saying, and they're doing it from a mega conglomerate. Amazon owns Whole Foods now. Why can't they go to their local farmer and buy that same better quality food? We got to make it the cool fad thing.
Right.
Can I jump in on that too?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Yeah, go. My apologies, Tripp, because you didn't weigh in yet. We'd love to hear you too. Come on. Go ahead.
No. You go ahead. I have my stuff written down. I can remember it. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Because I really wanted to say, because that I think it's the theory of the necessary evil. I feel like we're put in this position so that we do make a change, a huge change, a cultural, systematic change. And I believe one of the things that we're going to have to invoke is a culture of prosumerism. I think that if we all ran to our local butchers, our local farmers, our local gardeners, we will be sold out, or we would collapse the system within a matter of time. It's not going to take long. So we don't have enough. It's only 2% of our entire population are in the agricultural field. We cannot expect 2% of Americans to supply 98%. It's just unrealistic. We have to invoke prosumerism. That means this system that we're looking to have more access to healthy, nutritious, ethically sourced food, we have to be a part of that system, whether it's saving seeds, whether it's composting your scraps and returning it back to the farmer that you got it from, or again, spending your dollars. But you have to add in value to the system as well that we're calling for. So I think that's one of the things we have to nail down within the culture as well. We can't just go buy from the farmer. We need to figure out how we can add value so we can support the farmer now. Except instead of dollars, I might be somebody who makes bread, or I make soap, and I make charcoal, and now I can barter with the farmer. And now that system kind of maintains itself. And that's where the price reduction goes down dramatically. And this is data that we procured ourselves within our community here in Atlanta. I can spend a couple dollars, but once I start to barter, I'm overstepping that fiat currency, and I'm spending pennies on the dollar for the same product.
So I want to say that absolutely being able to barter in a local community set can also be another avenue of which to kind of sustain ourselves. It doesn't actually have to be with, the currency of the realm. I do want to say real quick that it would be great to get 100% off of the corporate teat. But I'm not exactly aiming for that. I just want to pull back enough that they feel it. You know what I mean? So 25, 50%, pick a couple products. It doesn't have to be everything. You don't have to boycott completely the big box chain stores. That's what I'm saying here. Don't be wrong. If you feel the need to, please do. But we've got food. We've got I'm right now I'm working on deodorants, laundry soaps, and hair care. I'm trying to find locally sourced stuff. I tried a mom and pop stuff that I had to get sent to me in the mail, and I still wasn't really I'm trying to find somebody in my area that does it already, so that way I can support somebody in my area. But so a couple of things I want to go over real quick. Earlier we talked about how when we're buying from a person, we're buying from a real person. You get to make more connection and more community that way. And it's transcending the transaction bit of just buying your goods and stuff. And I think that's also important when it comes to creating these bonds. And that's not easy for everybody. There's some people who just want to keep it as a transaction. You know what? That's okay. That's okay. But just know that there's another human on the other side of that. And then with the Walmart problem, I wanted to bring up specifically, the whole, them undercutting everybody for so long only to put them in this position, not only robbed us of the mom and pop stores, but it also robbed us of employment from those mom and pop stores, because now the only place to get the job is at Walmart, and they put their employees on welfare and take out peasant death taxes on them. So it's as evil as it can possibly get. And I don't know, man. And I'm not saying don't shop there ever, because I know that some people only have that as an option. But if we can take a time to find any other option for just a few things, just so that we're not spending all of our money with them, I think that'll make a big, big difference going forward. So great conversation so far, guys. I'm loving it. Thank you so much.
I'd like to weigh in kind of on what Farm Fresh was saying here too. With 2% of the population providing all of our agricultural needs at the moment, is once again something that was systematically designed, through the Reagan era and through the way that they funneled subsidies, the way that they have allowed genomes to be, or the DNA, genetic engineering to be patented. So farmers can't even replant their own crop. If you go get, Roundup Ready Monsanto crop, not that we want that being used either, but that's something that has made it so there's no competitive, you can't be competitive. My family used to have a dairy farm in Minnesota. Rural Minnesota lost 80% of its dairy farms through the 80s. It's one of those things where all those big farms then came and bought that up. And once again, allowing that to continue happening, it's not feasible for the mom and pop farm to even operate anymore. You'll not find any farmers around here that don't have another, real job aside from farming, which is a full-time real enough job as it is. But it's really frustrating because once again, then you're limiting your options, and there's a lot of obstacles to finding a way through that.
I think agriculture is a really big thing. And so we saw that huge dairy shift here in Vermont as well in the 90s. I currently live on what used to be like, I don't know, 100 head small dairy, but it was a family dairy. It employed 3 generations, and it's gone. There's not even a dairy in 100 miles from where I live. And before that used to be scattered. And now we're seeing the same thing with our meat products. And I think that's why I really focus on going local with our meat. Right now, the current largest pork producer in the US is a Chinese-owned company, and we are left with all of the manure from these pork products, and the meat itself is being shipped over to another country. So not only do these agriculture impacts have an impact on our food system, they also have a huge impact on our environment, because they're not treating the land when they're raising thousands of hogs appropriately, like a small farmer like Lawrence is doing, where he's rehabilitating the land as he's making these production. And can we feed more people if we went to a smaller scale model, when we know logistics is the hardest part about getting food to people? So if we have smaller farms spread across the country doing the right thing, what could that look like? And that's when I think of ethical consumption. How can I invest in those systems?
And I'd like to jump in with just we have to really be at war with convenience. I think convenience is how we got here. So yes, it's going to cost a little bit more. Yes, it's going to put you out of your convenience area. We might have to drive a little further. But this is where we are right now. We either going to do it or we're not. We have to really make the decision. And again, it's going to be hard. The fight is going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable. We just have to be head set, head strong on really providing a change that's going to benefit our children's children. And we have to be the ones that go through the struggle right now of maybe having those reduced options. We eat in season. We're really intentional about getting our meat. And if we can't get the meat, we don't eat meat. If we can't have but a chicken breast for dinner as a family of 6, we use the chicken as more so seasoning, and we have more beans or more leafy greens. And that's just where we are. It's that serious to us, to where our health and well-being and our surrounding health and well-being of our community really matters enough for us to make that bold of a stance to where we'll just simply eat strawberries only when it's strawberry season.
Word. I appreciate that. And like, that's another thing that I'm kind of like trying to take into effect right now, is like eating seasonally and that sort of thing. And it is a transition, because we have had like that convenience of the grocery store always having like berries all year round and stuff. They might get like more expensive in the winter because like they're having to pull them out of the freezer or whatever. But that's like, it's part of the convenience and stuff like that. And like I said, I do want to also start off again by saying, like, we're not asking people to go like whole hog right away. Like I feel like a gradual process is what's needed, and like then you can see like after you start this process, you see like how much more fun it becomes, and like how much easier, like how much better you feel about it. Like, and like that's one of the reasons like I started with the meat, because I happen to like live in Colorado, which, has a bunch of ranches, and I knew that like there had to be an option somewhere in my city. It just took time to find it. And yes, like it's in Wheat Ridge, which is like literally across town from me. Like, Denver's a big sprawled out city, so it takes, it's a day's journey to get there, to get the box and whatnot. But like, that's part of it, I suppose. And like, it's, and from that transition, trying to find like the next options has, it's interesting to me. And again, there's that I feel like it's a cooler option than just like, easily giving my money over to the same people I have been. Really quickly, I want to welcome David, TheCatalyst. Welcome in, my friend. Please don't feel like if you're driving, if you just want to like relax and listen in, that's all right. I don't want to put you in danger.
Yeah, no worries. Listen, I'm going to get to a spot here where I can post up here in just a couple of seconds. Thanks for having me, and I'm very sorry to be late. I was sitting here and I'm like, wait a minute, was it 10 Eastern or 10 Central? Like, I totally messed the time up.
That's
So
all right.
thanks for having me, and thanks for hosting the conversation, Tripp. Good morning, everyone.
Absolutely happy to have you here, my friend. Yeah, I say time math is hard to tackle, but we have a big nation, so we have to if we want to do cool things like this. Again, thank you to everybody who's in the chat with me today, because this is incredible. And yeah, pulling this off early in the morning is a great way. It's a great way to start a Tuesday, I think. Talking about ethical consumption. So I appreciate everybody who's been in. We were just discussing, actually, I think we sashayed very well into like the difficulties that, because we can put that cloud out there, that ethical consumption, that, this big and amalgamous thing. And like, it's intimidating. It really is. And so some of the difficulties, is like people don't know where they can start, what they can look for, those kinds of things. And I know that Miranda specifically has been doing a lot of really great work by pointing out different states with, CSAs and, all those sorts of things, just helping try to provide knowledge. Would you say that there's one in every state, Miranda? It's all right.
Sorry, I was stuck in like a comment and I couldn't unmute myself. I would say that I've been finding a lot of great local CSAs all around the country. I think it's interesting because I'm in a very tiny state, right? So finding something in my state isn't as big of a task as, say, Colorado. If something could be hundreds of miles away, an hour's worth of drive. And I've also found very interesting models of CSA, like the convenience thing in larger cities is really there. There was a meat CSA in Las Vegas that was delivering right to your door, and you could do upgrades of fresh bread and eggs. So I think if you are in, it's going to look a lot different depending on where you live, and that's where the community comes in. I think the more rural you are, it's going to be more important. We use the Farm Fresh 24/7 app, and you're connecting with growers and producers in a way that's the convenient, hey, I'm stopping by to buy a bar of soap, and I'll trade you some homemade vanilla that I made. So those like consumer to consumer, producer to producer connections are going to be more important in rural areas. And then when you're in a big city, you might find that there is a farm running a CSA, much like a grocery store. Here, I can go to a farm stand that's self-service, and it's going to have refrigerators and freezers where I'm picking out local foods from.
Right. We had a question in the chat. I don't remember. CSA stands for, is it collective sustain?
Community supported agriculture. And there's a lot of CSA acronyms, but whenever I refer to a CSA, it's community supported agriculture. And that model is this idea that people are paying money ahead of time and you're getting a share of the farm. But people now use it to say anything. Like, I'm part of a meat CSA where I put in $120 a month and I go to the farm down the road and pick up 15 pounds of meat. And it is gathered from farms across the state. So I have lamb coming from one farm. I have chicken coming from another farm. Even fresh fish that is fished off the coast of Alaska, frozen, comes from Alaska Airlines, and they pick it up in Boston and drive it to Vermont. It is wild, the systems that are here. And I think that's why I try to be an advocate for local food, because Vermont does it so well. And if I can talk about these systems that these people are, and they're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart, they're providing a means for themselves and their family. And that goes back to what Lawrence is saying about being a prosumer. You can provide for your family by participating in these fresh local food systems.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's those kinds of things. It's getting that kind of knowledge, like, knowing that those agricultural fairs exist and where you can find them, where you can hop in on them, that I think is really important, because like everybody, we have the big box stores available, easy to us. They market to us. So we get advertised about that all the time. But taking the time to research what other options there are, because there are other options. Like, small business makes up 50% of like our, economy and commerce. And it should be more than that. Like, we should be tipping that scale, really. But the people need to know. And so like, that's a really big, important part. Which is why education, like the way that you do things on your channel, so wonderfully, received, I think. And the idea that the higher cost thing would come down over time if we all participated, I think is especially an interesting point to like kind of talk about in the round, because we don't like there's a whole proofs in the pudding kind of deal. Like if we were put that perspective into practice, it would maybe take a little while to see, but making those options more popular, like it's like a floodgate kind of thing. You start trickling and it'll head that direction. Yeah. We brushed on ripple effects. I kind of want to go back to that because we start small. We do something, like the meats. Let's stay on the meats and things. And that circles back right directly into the community immediately, right? Because the butchers who hold the meat get their share. The people who are on the farm and stuff get their share. That helps them. It's like that story about the guy who stays the night in the hotel and pays ahead of time, and then that $100 bill circles around the entire town because they all pay their debts with each other. And then the guy's like, I didn't really like my stay, and he gets his $100 back. Like it's something like that's what comes to mind,
I think that's an important
That's
piece.
exactly the mechanism.
That a local dollar will circulate in your economy 7 times over. When you're buying from Amazon, that's directly leaving your community and going into the billionaire class.
Absolutely. And we've been trying to introduce a concept of just spending $20 a week on staple goods, bread, hygiene items, anything that's like easy, entry level for anybody to come in making. Lip chap, lip balm, lotion. And I've been encouraging people here in Atlanta and abroad to just start home, start hyper local. That's the most hyper local you can get. Look at your own cupboard, your own cabinet, your own shopping history and habits, and pick out a couple items that are safe enough to try, that are entry level, like bread making, and start to make bread because it's going to first impact your family. And we say if it's that nice, you do it twice. If you get the hang of the bread and you're making a decent loaf or flat bread, whatever it is, make 2 loaves. Make double the amount, put one on Farm Fresh 24/7 so your community can see, hey, it's other options out here. And of course, we're with that prosumerism verbiage, we're not mixing in that you have to be a professional. You don't have to be somebody who's done it for 10 years. It just has to be something that you say, hey, I did it. It works. It tastes good. Here you go. You know what I mean? And it's just that simple. We have to just get active. We have to be the change. And the only way to be the change is to get actively involved in both sides of the producing and receiving or spending.
Right. And really quickly, I want to address a comment down here by Born Thurs that I will say that as a small business trying to compete and grow, we make our products available on Amazon. And I totally get that idea, right? Because you want to get into as many places as possible to get seen and move that product. I will say that there's been, I'm not going to sit here and cite stuff that I've just seen sensationally on TikTok, but there are people out there who say that their board games and things like that, like they had a facility, like a rack full that they had to fight tooth and nail to try and get back. And it seems like they're still fighting in those kinds of things with an Amazon warehouse. And when the conglomerates get that big, they tend to be able to just to do whatever they please. And, it feels like they can get away with it. People like Lena Khan and the FTC are really trying to work towards making moves to protect us consumers from the top. And like I said earlier, it's a good start, but we need more help up there. And it's one of those things that we can take only so much ourselves and do these avenues and directions, but without top down protection from government officials that actually have our interests in mind, then it is like sand in the wind, like Jordan said earlier. But I think that the knowledge of that being a necessity is part of the problem. A lot of people don't know that the consumer protections are so blatantly open right now, and that they're getting screwed over 6 ways from Sunday. And even if they do know, they don't really know the full extent of it. So that's also an important part.
I want to touch on that a little bit more, because that is always an important part. It's really easy to look at Amazon like this big giant evil monster of every time you spend $1 on Amazon, Jeff Bezos gets $1 richer type of thing. But it is an important thing to remember that there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of small businesses that, you know, support themselves on the Amazons and the eBays and the TikToks of the world. And it's a really difficult thing to balance. And once again, back to that top down is we get those kinds of protections when we vote down ballot. Like, everybody focuses on the top of the ballot all the time for presidential races, and they forget about midterms. They forget about city council. They forget about state reps and state senate. They don't pay attention to mayoral races or anything like that. And these are the races that affect our lives. These are the races because your town can put in ordinances about the size of businesses that can operate there and how they can operate. You know, your state can do that. And the president can give you all kinds of pretty flowery promises and everything, but if they don't have a Congress to push and support them to pass all those things, it makes no difference either. And I think that this is, you know, I've been screaming it at the top of my lungs for it feels like a year now since we're in an election year, but it's like it's top down, and the only way you're going to do that is to vote top all the way down to the bottom of that ticket. And I don't know why it's so difficult for people to get on board with doing that. But we just need to keep reminding people that all the way down to the very bottom of that ticket needs to be voted on. If they want to see these changes, you know, if they like living in this capitalist hellscape, then keep sitting it out or voting third party or not voting at all.
Well, and see, like that's okay. So here's the thing, though. When people move forward into the voting space, like, okay, I will always talk about how, to me, voting is bare minimum. Like, I don't know if it was just the way that I was raised, but like the active civil engagement. And I know that I'm going to turn it over to David here in a minute because he has a really great thing about this. But like, you know, the idea that our civic duties extend far beyond just voting and like jury duty. You know what I mean? Like, there's more to be had in this like relationship as like a citizen in a civilization. I don't really want to take the words out of his mouth, but David has this thing about, you know, we have rights, we also have responsibilities. And so if you're in a good space to talk, David, I'd really like to turn it over for that little piece that you talk about all the time.
Yeah, for sure, Tripp. Yeah, I mean, that's everything. I mean, you know, to your point, citizenship. What does it mean to be a citizen in America today? And that's, we need citizen reform. One of the things that, you know, I'm promoting over with my panel or my channel and with the Smith Foundation and the nonprofit that I started, I've got 3 primary programs. One is the Rebuild the Village Initiative, which means, you know, kind of with you guys with the CSA kind of stuff. It's like, we've got to help take care of each other. We have duties and responsibilities as neighbors, as citizens, as brothers, as cousins, as, you know, I mean, our titles come with duties and responsibilities. And unfortunately, the last 40 years, we've just had this very myopic, very selfish, me first, let me get mine kind of mindset that has taken over our society. And now everybody's just out here going for self. You know, you won't take your cart back. You won't clean up after yourself when you eat. You know, you won't hold a door open for somebody. You won't speak to people. You won't even say good morning. If somebody says good morning, you won't say good morning back. It's just insane how selfish we have become. And so the only solution to that is for us to start using these tools to broach solutions, to be better citizens. What are my duties and responsibilities to each of you as a citizen? It's not just to vote. It's not just to serve on jury duty. It's not just to pay my taxes. It is to develop the coping skills, the conflict resolution skills, the courage to talk to my neighbors when we disagree, and find ways for us to come up with solutions for the issues that face us. And we know that we're being divided so we can be conquered. We know that it's bread and circus. This is not a new tactic that the power structure has implemented to divide good people. So if we know this, we need to stop falling for the banana in the tailpipe and make sure that every time we broach an issue on these channels, or we talk about issues, we also demand people say, hey, what are you going to do about it? What are you doing about it? I am tired of people coming on to social media just to bitch and to vent and complain when we obviously need people who care to do the work. Your concern is not work. And people have confused their concern with work.
Word.
So
Word.
we've got to have citizen reform. And that means run for office. Get on somebody's campaign. Go work for with the school board. Go sit on a committee with the council. Go find people like Farm Fresh and people who are actually bringing solutions to the table, and then start putting those things into action. So
Yep.
that's the key. We've got to rebuild the village. We've got to have citizen reform, and we've got to develop the coping skills and the conflict resolution skills to start doing that work. Right? We can identify the problems all day long. But if we don't say, hey, I'm going to go to the next city council meeting so I can find out what the hell is going on, so I can get educated on the process, and then make a decision, then say something. Because right now, most of us are popping off. We know surface level information. We've gotten the sensational information from social media, and we're not critically thinking about how this is going to impact me, how this is going to impact my community. So it first starts with us accepting the fact and also recognizing that this is long-term work, okay? This is not going to happen overnight. We didn't get here overnight. We're not going to fix this overnight. So there will be some short-term wins and some things we can share. But yeah, Tripp, that's where my head is. Citizen reform.
Word. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to speak on that, because like there is a thing about with what Jordan was saying about voting down ballot and being like actively engaged as a voter. I think that is important. I'm never wanting to dissuade the idea that people should not vote. I think that is, but I think it's really bare minimum. And as you spoke to the idea of responsibilities being a part of, the call to active citizenry is a needed piece to things. And people, for a bunch of different reasons, whether they be excuses or not, feel like they don't have the time, the energy, the effort to actually get involved and get engaged more than just like that top level. Like a lot of people don't know who their mayor is, they don't know who their city council members are, and they don't know who their state representatives are. They can't really be bothered, and so they don't really think about those things until they actually hear that person's name doing some wrong in their neighborhood or whatever, doing something that they don't like. And it's really interesting to me. We're going to try and keep this on ethical consumption, but when it comes down to voting down ballot, the differences between who does it and who doesn't is shocking, and I would really love to see that change. But getting back to ethical consumption, we have a few people in the chat, which is why I changed the little format here. I'm going to try and give us some some spotlights and whatnot. I just really quickly want to say hi to my new people, Spawshi and Tony. Welcome in. We are talking today about ethical consumption. We've already brushed on ideas about, picking something like a butcher or your soaps or something and trying to find a person to buy from instead of the conglomerations. We've talked about the difficulties that there are, few options in this great land, depending on, if you're in a big city or a small rural area. And we've gone a lot of different places. We're going to go ahead and just kind of take a moment. I want to thank the audience that's in here. Y'all have been really great, having some great conversations here, tapping the lives and sharing it. I've been watching the whole thing. Thank you to those who have been following along. Some really great people here in the chat. So thanks for being around. From there, I just want to give a few moments. We're gonna go up the line so we can get the new guys in, just to say some words, whatever words y'all want. If it's on ethical consumption, that'd be great. But whatever you guys want to say. Tony, you're going first.
Lucky me. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to see. Oh, and I get the big box. Dang, I should have done my hair first. It's great to see all of you in the boxes. Mad respect, seriously, to everyone here. I think with most of these issues, as somebody who's been in this realm for decades, trying to find real solutions and communicate across belief systems, skin colors and genders and religions, and trying to find this space where peace can be planted and cultivated over time, security can be planted and cultivated over time, I'll say this. The one thing we're missing the most is leadership, because most people that you talk to who are not inundated with this type of political, social, environmental type of information, language information, they would understand it best if they were able to practice it. But some of this stuff is so foggy to so many of us, even those of us who are in this space, that a lot of times if a leader steps forward and says, hey guys, let's go this way, and there are receipts for it, and they can give real, tangible, next step advice for people, they're more likely to try it, see what works for them within these realms, and then start to adapt themselves in this space. So when we're talking about ethical consumption, a buddy of mine just opened up a butcher shop in the town I grew up in. It's not even big enough to really be called a town. It's actually a village, which is good. And we're seeing it more and more. We're seeing it from all walks of life, where 15 years ago, my time as a touring musician, the only people making goat milk soap and making their own stuff were the hippies that I knew and the co-ops and stuff, like which is ironic, because you would think that the Midwestern down-home farmers who only live 2 or 3 or 4 miles away from the Amish would have a more firm grasp on that type of stuff, but they were still shopping at Walmart for the better part of last 20 years. And now we're seeing the more conservative Midwestern people hopping on this train, which is a good thing. That's a good sign. It means that the information does get out there eventually, which is exactly what Catalyst was talking about. All of this is long game. Nobody in this panel, I believe, is foolish enough to think that all of this hard work means that we get to see the results. It is falling on the civilization's sword over and over again, knowing that we may not ever see it. We're doing this for people we'll never meet and children that we will never hear their laughter. And in order for us to really do what we're doing, be a leader. Be the thing, go do the thing, and then show other people. Like Farm Fresh here, mad respect, man, because it's literally saying, we just did it. And now here's what happens when we did it. And then other people will be like, wow, I wonder what it'd be like if I did that, which is all our entire society is. That's why you have generations of kids saying skibbity toilet. It's because, oh, that one person said it. Now I'm going to say it too. Oh, white Nikes? Me too, bro. Oh, electric car? Me too. These products? Me too. This culture? Me too. Because we only have trend leaders right now. And that is the basis for most of our existence in our reality paradigm. And then I'll land the plane here by saying we need more political, social, spiritual, and environmental leaders to stand up, take the hits that you need to take by speaking up on this stuff, because not everybody's going to be on it. And they're going to try to talk shit and throw shade, which is fine. Thick skin is everything. Just don't be afraid to be the actual change that you want to see, regardless of the consequences. Because again, 15 years ago, hippies were making goat milk soap. Today, you have crunchy homestead conservative mamas also making goat milk soap. It's a fucking win, even if both parties can't stand one another. I'll mute my mic now.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, my buddy. That was a really great intro. Spawshi, my friend, if you have some words, I'd really like to hear from you. It's good to see you, my friend. We haven't really spoken in a minute.
Yeah, I've been busy trying to get my own stuff stabilized and started, which is difficult because a lot of it seems abstract, a lot more abstract than I thought. I have a relationship to math that seems classic, a classic stereotype amongst the autists, which I didn't really realize. But a lot of the decisions that I thought were like obvious to everyone aren't necessarily. And so some of the economical things, like if there are 20 people who are paying $15 a month on hosting, it would make a lot of sense to consolidate hosting fees, because if you look at that network, that's a lot more money than just like I pay $40 a month for my server. But everyone doesn't see the amount that everyone is spending, and there isn't a relationship to that difference, just for whatever reason. And there's a psychological principle, or not principle, I think it's bias. It's pretty common amongst humans and pretty common amongst other species as well, called loss aversion, which is when people assign more weight to the possibility of losing something than they would to the things that they would possibly gain. And so when it comes to doing a very, very small thing, like helping, jumping in, intervening at all, if it's more inconvenient, if it is inconvenient, then the inconvenience stands out more than the benefit. Even if it's like, this is literally going to cost you thousands of dollars, maybe next month. It's like, I don't really want to. And we see that with a lot of others. Like when we add the influences of systems, then it gets a lot more difficult. Like, why aren't people going to the doctor? Like the loss aversion part of it is true. Like people are afraid of having the inconvenience of going to the doctor, so they don't want to. And there's also like the medical trauma and all of those systems that go into play. So in terms of like, I was just thinking of the school board example, how it makes sense to tell people to get involved with the school board, but getting involved with the school board is a social setting. So people who maybe have really good ideas, but have just had terrible experiences. Like their previous town was full of a whole bunch of people who were on the board only to dismantle somebody, like only to oust one person. And then the rest of the year, they didn't really care because that's just the coincidence. Like coming from that town, that's going to color anyone's perspective.
Absolutely.
So
well
those
said.
are the main things that I heard.
Absolutely. Very well said. I'm going to bring myself back up here for just a moment because you brought some really great perspective that I wanted to share, some food for thought. There's something I love what you said there about, we have, sorry, my brain just went blank. That Swiss cheese brain, man. But no, like you bring some really interesting ideas because the feelings that we have that we don't know what everybody is spending, we don't know what the other people's costs are, is a really important key there, right? Because we have this idea that buying local is always going to be more expensive, just because, of course, that the fair market labor, all of those practices, like if we actually pay people what they're worth, we're going to be paying kind of a pretty penny about it. But and then there's that idea, if like we're all buying it, then those prices, like supply demand, like this is basic economics kind of stuff. So like if there was to be more transparency, and I'm not saying like let's just pull out our grocery list and start talking about how much we're spending, because like that's a personal thing, right? It feels like something like, I don't know if I want to share that I spend this amount for this like really nice cheese because I'm treating myself or whatever. But like maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's something in the community setting where we're like really kind of more honest about what we're spending and where we're spending as part of that. And I'm going to go ahead and give it to Miss Miranda again, Tea and Transplants, from there.
So that is such an interesting idea because price transparency is ethical consumption, just like wage transparency is ethical employment. We want to know how much people are paying for labor so we can price it appropriately. And then there's a question in here, how do we build the resilience to do this work? And we're talking about this idea that if voting is our base level citizenry, breaking down barriers is that next level. How do we create more access, whether it's to voting, whether it is to access food? One thing that's really big that I'm trying to deal with is transportation. My job, I run a farmer's market in Vermont. And so I'm connecting local food with local people, and we use SNAP and EBT so that food of fresh farms can be accessible to people who have SNAP and EBT. But how are SNAP and EBT recipients going to get to the farmer's market on a Saturday, which is the only day that we're open? So we start to see these barriers, and now it becomes a system problem that we need to work together to solve. Can we have a mobile market where we put the farmer's market on a bus and we're driving to the people? I've seen the city of St. Louis did this for National Farmers Market Week. I did a deep dive into different farmers markets around the country, and St. Louis had this incredible program, which was a roaming market. They took old city buses, they're putting fresh produce on it, and they're driving it around doing pop-up markets throughout the city. And that increases accessibility in a way that the traditional farmers market model never could.
Word. Great. Well said. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let's see.
I actually would like
David,
to
do you
comment
have?
on that.
Sorry, what was that?
I like to comment on, not really to comment on that, but extend it, I guess.
Okay.
I was thinking about living in the suburbs and how there are a lot of old people who walk around. And when they walk around by themselves. And I was kind of wondering if it was possible to get people who just roam around neighborhoods and talk about stuff like campus tour guides.
I like it. I can dig it. I think that's an avenue. It was definitely to like start. Here, put myself up real quick. I think that making it sort of a position in a way that would, give people a chance to speak to those community members in such a way would be a great avenue for connection. Getting to know, because like those people who walk around those suburbs often, know the people that are living in the houses, at least to some extent. I wouldn't say, and like it used to be like seen as like nosy, but it's not really nosy. It's like, just being neighborly in a way. David, it is your turn, my friend, to speak some words.
Sure. Thank you, Tripp. I'm a little bit overwhelmed with this because I'm frustrated. I'm close. I feel like I'm going to quit, right? Because when Tony talked about leadership and how, we need better leaders, we are the leaders, right? The people who are here, who have started platforms, who go online and we talk about solutions, we are the leaders, but we don't get platformed. We don't have solutions don't garner views. When I go live, I go with solutions most part, and I get nobody in there. When I do my work here locally, I bring solutions to the table. I can't get people to show up. And so for somebody like me, who's been out here for 30 years doing this work, I'm incredibly frustrated. I'm ready to quit. And I know other people who have quit. Like there's a guy on here, he goes by the name of Zeitgeist, named Prof. Prof for talking about he's quitting. Prof's like, I'm getting off of TikTok because it's like I'm being shadow banned. I'm fighting, I'm swimming upstream. People aren't listening. I'm getting blocked. I'm getting my posts get banned. I'm just like, that's me. I'm getting community guideline violations when I don't violate the guidelines. I'm being silenced. And then the very people who are my solutions would help, they don't support me. And so we've got to figure out how to develop the resilience. And I'm speaking to myself here, because if good people start to quit, if we start to fall out, if we lose hope, God help us, because evil doesn't succeed because bad people do bad things. Evil succeeds because good people do nothing. And you look, the majority of people on TikTok and social media, they are just bitching. There are not many solutions. There are not many people saying, here's how we fix it. They just vent, and that doesn't help. So we've got to develop the resilience, and I don't quite know how to do that.
You're absolutely right, my friend. There is something to be said about how, one, I want to say that TikTok is not a solution. It is a tool. And like, this is just a means and avenue of which to do various amounts of things. I don't think that, and like, yeah, it's a hard struggle, man. And I know that you're feeling it. And I appreciate you still showing up and being here, and more importantly, showing up in real life for the community that you do, because like that's where the real sauce is, because that's where it, if and when shit hits the fan, where you're going to be needed the most, not this like, internet space, on the ground at home. So I appreciate the work that you do, and I understand that you're frustrated, my friend. I really do. With that, I'm going to turn it up to Off Your Wagon. He so politely raised his hand just a little bit ago, so I know he has some words to speak. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of expand on what Catalyst David was saying here, because again, I obviously made the point about voting and voting down ballot, and we get this a lot from people who feel very much passionate about we're not doing enough as a society, as individuals, as citizens, is like, that's not enough. Like, that's the bare minimum. And I think that putting that rhetoric back out when when we're looking at people who aren't doing that bare minimum. And a lot of them aren't doing that bare minimum not because they don't want to. A lot of them aren't doing it because they don't have access, because they don't have time, because they are on the edges or deep into poverty. And it's really hard to get that kind of civic engagement when you are just worried about, am I paying rent this month? Can I feed my kids and get them the school supplies that they need? And so when we criticize people's lack of engagement, as in they're not doing that bare minimum, and we don't have that empathy as to why they're not doing that, we're automatically putting up another obstacle to getting them to engage. And it is really super hard. I did volunteer management for years. I've done, obviously, I think all of us, as he's saying, we are leaders on this platform. We are here to educate, but to say that we're sitting here and just bitching. And I don't think that you were leveling that at any of us specifically, but to say that we're sitting here and bitching, a lot of times people need that solidarity, that they don't feel alone. And that's that next step towards getting them engaged. And a lot of times just talking about the issues is educating people that they're not going to get that education anywhere else. They might find something that's important to them. And I think that undercutting that, because it's not making the progress that any of us want to see, in the long run does more harm than good, and ends up frustrating us to the point where, like he was saying, he wants to quit because we're not getting that motion that we want. I think just in engaging anybody and supporting anybody to even do that bare minimum of the next step that's going to improve their lives and all of our lives, in that civic engagement, because that's where it comes. You got to get them in the door that little bit, and then you got to boost them up from there. And again, voting comes before running for something. You know what I mean? And getting involved in a union comes before being your union leader, and learning a skill comes before starting a business, and all of that kind of stuff, a local business, and all of that is the leadership stuff that we need to be able to support and encourage people to do at their pace, where they're at. And it's tough. It's tough because all of us feel the frustration here that, we want to see more faster. But I think it's really important to have empathy that a lot of these people are really, really struggling to even just get by in their own everyday lives. And just the thought of being involved in anything beyond that, even getting out to a voting booth, doing anything along those lines, making your own soap or anything along those lines just seems like an astronomical obstacle that they can't get over. And we need to really support wherever they're at, getting them in that door, making their life situation better so they have more of that free time and more of that emotional and mental bandwidth to take that next step all the way up to become those leaders of our communities.
Absolutely. Very well said. Very well said.
I'd like just to respond real quick.
Actually, just David, I have just the thing, just to piggyback off that, and I'll give it to you before we give it to Lawrence, okay? Because he said something really important here about how the importance of meeting people where they are is kind of vital in this, and it's like that empathy that he was speaking on, and like the people that, for one, don't feel like they can engage, aren't willing to go that extra mile because they may be in survival mode. There are 100 different ways to help support them as community members that will kind of help get them in the door. But it's the small incremental moving with, you can't expect somebody to, reach that point of seeing how the sausage is made and then going full throttle into it. Everybody's going to have different speeds, different emotions. And some people are going to have to really take time to deal with it. And that's, it's really important to try and not necessarily, I don't want to just say be empathetic to that, because some in some regards, people will get the information, we'll treat them with kid gloves, and then they'll go back to those creature comforts. So there is some balance there to be had, of course, but I don't know, there's something to be there about incremental steps sort of deal. And we'll go ahead and turn it over to you, David.
My position is not about a lack of empathy. This is about accountability. And because people are struggling, that does not give you a pass for doing what you can do. Doing nothing is not an option. That's something everyone can do. Level of society, regardless of whatever the situation is, you have got to develop the resilience to do something. and not this fragile bullshit we got in our society today that says, well, I'm just struggling too much. I can't do anything. You just got to let me just sit here in my pity and just let me just skate. And you didn't have to pull more weight for me because I'm not going to do anything. That's the society we have right now. I'm not suggesting, I don't have a lack of empathy. Doing nothing is not an option, regardless of who you are in this situation. We have all got to pull some weight. We've all got to do something. And that's my point. What is that you can do? You might not do what I can do, but damn it, you got to do something.
I want to point out, looking at this from a pragmatic standpoint of moving society forward here, you just said you're feeling frustrated because what you're doing is not working. So the demanding of that accountability as you see it, by your own admission, says was not being successful. I'm looking at this at a pragmatic level of this is how you get people in. This is how you bring them in the door, give them the ability to be accountable. Because if you go back with that attitude of they're not being accountable, I'm doing more work than you and you need to pull your weight, and that's accountability, not a lack of empathy, most people are going to tell you to fuck off.
I don't disagree. I think you guys both have some merit in your conversations here. I do want to point out the fact that when we say do something, a lot of people are like, what is something? Like, what is that? And so, like, in my perspective, I think one of the best things we can do, one of the things that may offer the most amount of help, is just providing the list of options. You know, it's like, yeah, you want to do something? How about start the Little League? How about do the community gardening project? How about start baking bread and start giving, you know, like bartering it with your neighbors? Like, really, like a long list of options to the point where people start seeing themselves on that list. And at that point, then they'll be like, oh, well, I can do that. It's going to take me, you know, like I've got my grandmother's great sourdough bread recipe that I learned to do, you know, in the panini. And so, like, you take those kinds of things and, like, you've got to let them see themselves there, because that's a big piece of it. Like, if you just say, you know, do something and leave it at that, they're going to be like paralyzed by indecision because there's hundreds of problems to get involved with. But like, they got to figure out where they're passionate about and where they see themselves. I think that's probably most important. And from there, I'm going to turn it over to Lawrence, because I think that's a perfect spot to jump on.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, I was nipping at the bud. So yeah, that's why we started our initiative with community building and restructuring our citizenship and what we're supposed to do in responsibility levels with food, because it's very much like one of those cliche things, but everybody has to eat. And that's a way, as David was saying, how do we create and have that resiliency strengthened within our culture, is we have to do it. And that thing can be something, since we all have to eat, we all need soap, we all need these simple things. People were doing these things and sustaining their households with third grade educations. So again, that floor is very much an easy threshold to get in. So now we can coerce people into this movement because it's something you can attain. You can just make a lip chap or a lip balm, and somebody out here, like, we probably all got lip balm in our houses or in our pockets. I know I do, but it's those small steps forward into the culture. And now you have a responsibility to your community. You might just be making the sourdough bread, but you know it's 5 families who are depending on your bread for this week. And now again, we're rebuilding the culture. We're rebuilding our intention behind gathering behind this moving system, and we're saying, hey, I do belong here. I have something to do. I have something. Moving system, and we're saying, hey, I do belong.
Hold on. Got it.
Okay, cool. So yeah, it's again, like we're all saying, we have to organize it. If we're the leadership, now we have to organize how we do things to make it appropriate for people to come in. How do we make it? How do we market it? Like, this is a system that has been marketed to us. We've been impregnated with these thoughts, these views, these cultural seemingly norms. We know we can reverse it. Now, how do we come together and start to organize collectively with intentional spectrums of where we're going as a community? And again, I'm saying the easiest thing that I found proof of concept laying in good soil and being able to be cultivated is through food, right? Pun intended. Choose food, because whether your land access is limited, I'm saying you can still forage. You can still identify. All the medicine comes from the ground. All of our things comes from the natural resource. We're not negate it from nature. We can walk into nature. We can walk into a conservation park. We can walk into a national park. We can pull off to the side of the road and find elderberries. It's things that we can do even with loss of land, with no money, little to no money. So again, that's where we access this community and restructuring of the citizenship.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great place. You know, like we do have an abundance above us, but I think that it's really important to note that knowledge is needed when it comes to those kinds of things because, you know, people, I would love the idea of just like going out and pick and berry. Like, honestly, I have this grand idea of like a solar punk permaculture type farm setup to where like people can just walk down, like, you know, like, everywhere you see green grass, we're growing food instead. And like people can just go and pick it as it's ripe and ready and like take it home with them. Like that, you know, utopian ideal and stuff like that exists in my head. But, you know, and like part of that though is the knowledge of like what is good to eat and things, because not every berry will treat you the same, that sort of deal. So like, you know, there is that sort of like, you have to know these sorts of things. And for a lot of people, that is a barrier, because like just knowing that the possibility of poison being out there stops a lot of people from even trying. They're like, you know what, I'm not going to take my chances, because even if I'm like 99% sure, I could still be wrong. And so like that, you know, education is very much an important part, which, by the way, everybody here right now, I just want to let you know, the next one we're doing is on education for all. It'll be 2 weeks from today and a little later in the day as well. So you'll see, if y'all followed me, y'all see updates on that as well. Thank you. I want to take a moment and just thank every single person here that's been in the conversation, and T and Transplants dropped out, but I want to thank her as well. You guys have made this a wonderful experience so far. We're about an hour and 15 in, which means we're in the last 45 minutes. And I just want to take a moment to, first of all, say hi to Evolving Seeds. Michael, it's good to see you. I'll get you up here to say a few words, and then we're just going to kind of open it to a general discussion. Oh, wait. Tony, if you'll wait till after Michael has his words, then I'll get you up, okay? Then you'll go next, all right? I see you. But yeah, Michael, I want to say thank you for coming in and waiting so patiently for us. And hi.
Hello, I'm at work. Please forgive my background noise. I'm not going to say anything to the extent of what the world needs to do and what the world doesn't need to do and what we need to stop doing. I'm going to sit here and say that so few and rare times do I have the ability to go into a space where all of the intersectionality, all of the positive and equitable and efficient and ethical things that people are talking about as solutions are in one place being talked about by the best people to talk about them, the people who are informed. I am so proud of you guys. I love you guys. I'm just in awe of you bringing this space together and having this level and this amount of people here, because a lot of our shit is suppressed, sadly, because they don't even want solutions spoken when they're spoken politely and civilly. So I just appreciate the heck out of you guys. And I do want to ask people in the comments to go ahead, show some love to your panel, show some love to the platform, because this space is a rare space, man. And tap that screen. I'll say that we offer free books on my website, but other than that, like, you guys are smashing it. It's rare that I go into a place and I don't feel like I have to I have to address a microaggression, and I gotta make sure people aren't taking things out of context. I have to babysit a whole ass panel and the comments, and I don't have to do that here. And I just appreciate you guys so much.
Thank you, my friend. I think that's probably one of the best compliments I've ever gotten. Thank you so much for that. Tony, it is your turn. Go right on ahead, my friend.
I love all of you so much. This kind of goes to the greater conversation, but also this idea of leadership and how we get frustrated with the mission over time. Again, I've been in these spaces not quite as long as David or Catalyst, but I'm not far behind you, man. These gray hairs are multiplying by the day. And I actually pivoted consciously, because here's the thing that we learn from psychology is that when you challenge someone's worldview, and every single one of us can take a mental note, it's a rhetorical thing, but we all know what I'm about to say, we double down. Whether it's religion, identity, it's some truth about their reality when we challenge it. And when the experts are pressed on the matter, how do we get people to change a fundamental observation about reality? they lean on the Socratic method. You have to be patient. You have to be gentle. You have to continually ask questions so that they then will lead themselves to the answer, and maybe even an answer we didn't expect, and maybe one that's more illuminating than the one we would have tried to give to them. So I pivoted my content away from the nitty-gritty of this prosecutor did this, or this attorney general did that, and this politician takes money from this corporation, and this corporation's tied to the CIA, and this and that. It's like the wormhole's too deep. And everybody, unless they're already in the club, is probably going to refute a lot of it because it's so different and dissonant from the reality that they know. That's why I pivoted personally to self-help, spirituality, and relationships, because everybody, like, we're struggling in marriage, we're struggling in friendship, we're struggling in community. And so then when that starts exponentially stacking up to the point where we're talking about things on a macro civilization level, it's no fucking mystery to me, man. I'm not surprised that things are in shambles. We can barely keep our marriages and friendships together. It's a mess. That to me is like, I had to backpedal and say, whoa, maybe there's a whole bunch of people that aren't even read. And Spawshi actually was one of the people that helped change the direction of my content, because he illuminated to me that it was a language thing. He's like, you know, we're not utilizing the same language here around politics. You need to be very careful of this. And I had to take a step back for some time to analyze, like, wait a minute, he's so correct. Because if you brought one person from every language that was ever uttered on planet Earth and you brought them around a leaf, something instantly recognizable as a leaf or a cloud or something that every single one of them have seen, they would all recognize the object but have a different word to describe it. Whether that's God, love, man, woman, like peace, war, we all generally know the concept, but the words are all different, and our relationship to those words are different. So here's my thing. We're not talking about politics. Hell, we're not even talking about civilization. We're talking about relationships. The relationship I have to myself, which gives me the strength to show up as a leader or an innovator or a first mover in localized, hyper-local food systems. Like, no matter what it is, I have to be whole in myself, at least enough, at least on the journey of strengthening myself, so that then that relationship will help me understand the relationship to the people living in my own house, the people closest to my heart. And then we start to practice those things so that we get a little better, so that we can start talking to our neighbors and I personally, at this point in my life, and maybe one of you can steer me in a new direction, but I am utterly convinced that we're not even having a political conversation. We're having a conversation about relationships. And I think as long as we remember that, we show up doing what we can do, and slowly through the Socratic method, and this is what I meant by the crunchy granola conservative moms are now making their own goat milk soap, but they really weren't doing that 20 years ago. This is the slow Socratic method of question, question, question. Not, here's the objective truth, here's what the corrupt politicians are doing, and this is what, like, everyone's going to shrink and they'll go behind their defense mechanism. So I think it's not really about empathy, David. It's more about understanding that this isn't a political conversation. This is about human relationships at the end of the day. And maybe that's too simplistic for some, but I'm having a hard time seeing this conversation as anything else. I really am.
Can Tony respond to a comment by Balios and Xanthos? Because I feel like that's a pretty good.
I was actually going to read that out loud real quick. So let me go ahead and I'm going to keep you up there, Tony, because I want you to answer this. Hold on, wait. I got to scroll back.
Sorry, I missed it.
How does strengthening the bonds in interpersonal relationships strengthen the bonds between groups?
Okay, because a group is people who are made up of individuals, and those individuals have identified with an overarching group theory, right? And now we're talking about group interaction, and then from group to group interacting. That's why diversity is so important, because I can't go, or at least perhaps I wouldn't be the best candidate to go to a Navajo reservation and start talking about my ideas of peaceful civilization and citizen action. but you damn sure know I can fit in at the local watering hole in my small Ohio fucking town. I fit right in there. I ain't going to Miami, walking up to some Puerto Ricans and being like, hey, what do you think about Citizen Act? Like, that's not my place, man. We need all of us on this conversation, and we need so many different types of people having this conversation. But I can't show up and be an effective communicator and do it with love and do it with patience and do it with the kind of empathy I have for my daughter. It's going to take her a while to learn certain life lessons, but I'm not going to sit there and badger her. I'm going to do everything I can to facilitate an environment for her where she can come to these conclusions on her own in her own unique way and perhaps even show me something along the way. I can't operate as a true teacher or leader or student in this world unless I show up humble. And humility is step number 1 in personal development every single time.
Word. Thank you, Tony. That was great. I just really quickly want to say that in the grand scheme of things, like, yes, this conversation is all of that. But however, today's conversation is on ethical consumption, which is connected. It's all connected, and it's always all connected. But that being said, I'm going to just cycle back here just a little bit. Hey, Mandy. First of all, I want to say, again, thank you guys so much for being here. This is incredible. I really love having this type of round table discussion. And I think that, even, and all the people in the chat as well, thank you for tapping and conversating and doing all the things that you're doing. It is awesome. Getting back round to ethical consumption, I do have one more point of topic that we have not quite touched on yet. And that, well, I mean, we have and we haven't, because there's this grand scope of we're looking at it on the personal level of like what we can do. But there's also things like policy change, and like the need for a revitalization of this idea just being cool. You know what I mean? Like having the options is part of it, and then making it the more incentivized option to go with, that kind of thing. That this is the perspective change that needs to happen. And I think that we're doing a great start. I think that there's a lot happening. Like that idea of 20 years ago, it was only the really like hippie doobies that were doing like the homemade soaps and stuff, and now we're seeing more options of that because that perspective is starting to take hold for people. And I think we're going to see a grand rise. I think that like this time in history will be looked at as like this grand change in perspective. And I think we're all playing a part of it in different lanes, whether it be our meats, our soaps, or, any other type of good. Like, the microbrews and stuff is a great example. Supporting microbrews instead of buying the big, the Coors and all the big box stuff is an excellent example of like helping to support people who do things for passions. And thank you for helping me achieve my life goal. So appreciated, very much so. I'm just going to open the floor to anybody who would like to talk. Just go ahead and let me know. All right, I got you. Go ahead.
Hi, and yes, I appreciate you even having me up again. I wanted to touch on something that Farm Fresh said, which we do feature you on the website. You're I think the only organization in the health section. And there was something you said, which was along the lines of marketing that people activism hasn't been marketed to people. It's been thrown at people. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Activism hasn't been marketed to people. It's been thrown at people. And if you go on Evolving Seeds, the main thing that it says, our mission statement is to bring activism into the mainstream. And that, when we're talking about just even tying it to ethical consumption, that's one of the things that we can use to bring activism into the mainstream. And I've identified 2 ways that we can bring activism in the mainstream, not from a marketing perspective, but from a practical perspective of how to present the information. When I look at information, I look at, does it have somebody to blame and does it have somebody to beg? Agriculture and aquaponics and all of the real solutions don't really have too much oversight on them when it comes to begging and blaming. I go pick up trash. As part of Evolving Seeds, we have a day where we pick up trash, but as an activist of 34 years, I've been picking up trash everywhere I go since I've identified what litter was. That's just a small example of, and I do it, for me, it's what I call spiritual currency. I do it but how I can present it to the mainstream and make it more mainstream is the goal. And so I just want to say I also want to point out that I don't think it's an accident that like 99 or 100% of us have our video cameras open and you can see us, because we can stand 10 toes about anything we say because we're in a space of solutions. Whereas people in a lot of those harmful spaces, you can't see anybody on the panel, anybody you can't see anybody. So I just wanted to show some appreciation and reflect on that too. But I wanted to analyze how we can bring activism, the full spectrum, into the mainstream, and kind of like ponder on that, even especially from a ethical consumption point of view. How can we get people to see ethical consumption as a benefit to them?
Right. And I think that's, go ahead, Spawshi.
I'm going to think about that from, actually, I don't know how to frame this. Trying to get people to do things. No, I can talk through it or just bumble through some ideas. And if anybody's inspired, please feel free to interject. But something that I've noticed is that it's very difficult to get some of the creatives that I've been working with to play nicely with each other because they all are nervous about being exploited. And I remember a couple years ago, there was a project that was looking for web development, and I didn't do it because I was like, y'all aren't going to pay me. And that was the frame that I was thinking about. But without doing that, I wasn't able to actually, I didn't have anything on my resume for the audience that I would have worked with. And so they don't know that I can do the kinds of things that I would have been able to do. And it just hasn't really come up where I'm in a community of people who are looking for my skills. So that kind of thing, I think, is difficult because when a lot of people acknowledge that activism is necessary, the only reason they acknowledge that it's necessary is because there's a problem. And so when they're entering a space and they're worried about being exploited, and they're also only there because something's wrong, then the framing is off. But I have found that some of the people that I've been working with and keeping in my community have collaborated with each other for free. And one of the reasons why they would be incentivized to work with each other is because they've been in a space with somebody that they mutually trust. And they can say, oh, you know Spawshi? Cool. That's just a small thing that they can do. And they know that they probably aren't going to be exploiting each other, partially because they're associated with someone mutually who is trying to find solutions against exploitation.
Absolutely. Actually, I want to bring this to a point here that you make, because what you're talking about really is the idea that our connection creates a sort of social currency in a way. This dude and he, you guys are friends, and he would say that you're friends. That's social currency right there. And in that case, it creates the social contract. Now, we can talk a lot about social contract and how those, in the conglomerations and corporations have basically broken it for a long time. And that's definitely a perspective to have. The idea that we can revitalize our social community bonds in our neighborhoods and build that social contract for ourselves, with that determination of I'm not going to screw you over, mutually speaking, because that in turn will also shine a big light on how we've been getting screwed this whole time. And I really quickly want to point out this comment that I like, because personally, I don't know what it is. I'm having to deal with some stuff on the back end about the word activism, because to me, I hear it and it's I don't know if that's exactly what I'm doing. It is, but I don't there's something about the connotation dripping off of that word over, the fact that it's been changed in the language over time and the way that we use it and stuff like that kind of feels a little dirty. And so this comment says, not against activism, but I think we should further discuss about our relationship with consumption, because I think that, is a big part in it. Our personal relationship with how we consume the things that we do is a big piece of this. Yes, go ahead, David.
See, why would that be a negative response, right? What's going on in our society that we see activism as a bad thing? This is the part that just staggers my mind, because again, doing nothing is not an option. And all of these issues that are happening in our world, from our food to politics to education, interfamily, interpersonal, all of it is connected, and it all goes back to a lack of accountability, a lack of resilience, a lack of coping skills, a lack of communication skills, a lack of character to do your part. And when I point that solution out, it becomes, oh, you're not empathetic, and oh, your presentation is wrong, and all this other bullshit. If you don't do the work, the shit's not going to get fixed. That's the bottom line.
I agree with you.
And whether you like my presentation and me saying that, that doesn't change the solution.
Right.
There are a lot of
And
people
so-
who are doing things that aren't actually effective, and they feel very good because they're doing something.
yeah, no, I'll give you that.
That's all.
But that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting you do stuff just because it makes you feel good. You have
Right,
if
but
you're not
like
getting
how-
the results that you want, if you're
Right.
not actually fixing the problem, then what you're doing isn't a solution. It's just work. It's just busy
Exactly.
work.
And a lot of the things that we need to do are going to take decades. And so some of the very small things like being available, for example, something that adds cultural glue, for example, is being able to go to Walmart and getting wide ruled paper. And you can recognize wide ruled paper because you went to public school. If you went to public school, only if you had this experience. And so the ability to pull up a sheet of paper and have that nostalgia creates the possibility that I can use that for marketing and actually reach an audience that would understand what that paper is for, the format of like writing your name, writing the period, writing the teacher. And then that can be used to describe how to write photos, like write the date and like the reason why these things would exist. And that doesn't seem like it's very, very impactful, but somebody needs to actually maintain that cultural rhythm. And that's going to take decades to actually pay off.
Because what you're talking about is having that sort of connection. You're absolutely right. And I want to go ahead and move it to Tony because I see his hand being up. Go ahead, Tony.
Let me unmute there. I want to speak to a couple things. This is such a nuanced and brilliant conversation. So if we're talking about ethical consumption, which is an entire universe of a topic in and of itself, but I do want to address this thing on activism, because those of us who have had our eyes on this for a long time, what about everybody who campaigned for Bernie, thinking that like this was the real thing? You know, this is the real step forward, you know? Please continue to donate to me so that I can have real estate portfolios that are valued over $400 million. Like, fuck, man. Like, why that? Why that again? Even Obama, like, okay, ask Syria, how do they feel about Obama? And then let's go to Standing Rock. To the people who were involved in Standing Rock, they can list you every win that they've been able to have there. But yet to the larger narrative, people are like, what? Where? For what reason? What happened? Wait, how long ago did this happen? Like, activism isn't the word. And I'm with David. To the people in the space, the word activism is like, it's sanctimonious. It's a sacred thing. It's a sacred practice of making your world a better place. But I think for this new age, for this new generation, this new wave of people coming into this space of productivity on a civilization level, it might be better to just tell people that what we're actually doing is community building. We're the civilization builders. We are the head cornerstone. We are the foundation. We are the Freemasons. We're the new Illuminati. We are the people who from the ground level up. Ooh. Sorry.
Yikes.
At least it's the actual one and not just the dead battery beep. That would tell too much about me.
Sir.
I did just change the battery, I swear. But yeah, so I think just changing the word in and of itself, and to someone like me, or maybe even David, like, I know activists and people who have accomplished great and powerful things, and it's a beautiful word, but I think a lot of people are missing the fact that what we're actually doing here is building civilization. We're building the future, just as our ancestors did before us. And when we view it from that lens, the conversation does change. The types of things we want to talk about change when we're like, we are a tribe, we are a people of the earth, and we are in the process of building civilization. We're continuing the process, that's all. But when we say activism, we think, you know, the freaking Westboro Baptist Church or a bunch of blue-haired like college kids, you know, screaming about
Use the
things
word
that they're half
architects.
educated on. You know, it's the connotation's different, man. But if you frame it as we're building civilization, that conversation changes. That's my plane landing.
All right. So first of all, yes, I want to say that this is a giant nuanced conversation. Whether we're looking microly at the there's actually I'm going to go ahead and jump off to wagon because after this I'm going to start doing wrap ups for last words. So go ahead, Jordan. Oh,
I just wanted to point out that we've had this whole conversation, and the one thing that we haven't like brought up directly is co-ops. I think that, you know, a lot of people don't really understand what a co-op is, but that has tons and tons of impact in the town that used to be closer to the one I'd have to drive a half hour to shop at now, but still fairly rural Minnesota has a co-op, and yeah, the produce and everything's a tad bit more expensive, but it's all locally sourced. It's got a little coffee shop in there. It's got a bookstore attached to it. You know, it's definitely kind of that crunchy granola feel, but they're always busy. And they have a lot of the resources, food resources that you can't find at the Walmarts and the big chain grocery stores and stuff like that. And you know where it's all coming from. And like my power company is a co-op, and you know there's different levels of involvement you can get with that, but there's a ton of options for giving local homesteaders and farmers that ability that T and Transplants was talking about, how they have their farmers market one day a week. Well, a co-op's just a farmers market with a grocery store structure around it. You know, it's a brick and mortar farmers market. Those are things that with enough community organization, you can put in and diversify that cost, spread that cost out over the community, and the whole community can benefit from it in a way that, you know, we all still need to make a living. And they can bring the fruits of their labor that returns to them in actual capital. And I think that we've really lost sort of the, you know, co-ops used to be huge back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s Depression era. And I think we've kind of gotten away from that, and just educating and giving people resources to build new co-ops in their communities for all kinds of things. Because it doesn't just need to be food. Like I said, our power company is a co-op. You could have co-op internet infrastructure if you wanted. In fact, our internet going in right now is through our power company. It's through the co-op. That gives a huge resource, especially to places that don't have the interest of bigger corporations, because there's not the population density out there to give them the resources that, you know, people in more densely populated areas have.
Right on. Yeah, great point. Co-ops have not been discussed up until this point, and that is another great way to, you know, many different needs being met in that space. I know that back home in my small little town in Mexico, there is actually a locally owned grocery store. Now, of course, they still source a lot of their stuff from like the big guys or whatever, but they also have like locally sourced eggs. They may have, it's New Mexico, so like all the tortillas are freshly made daily, and like there's like real hatch green chili and like all the good goods. And like those kinds of options, like that family who owns, it's like two stores. There's like one on like either side of the county. And they have like that kind of market, you know, their direct competitors are Safeway and whatnot, but like they do pretty well for themselves, because like the people understand that going to them is supporting this, you know, this style of economy. Co-ops are another great one. I have, there's a few places in the city that I live in where it's like they have, you know, co-ops, zero waste stores and all kinds of really cool, neat concepts like together, you know, with like cooking classes and all that kind of stuff. So like those things are definitely possible, and taking time to learn about them and, you know, showcase them or what have you. You know, everyone's got the different lanes of how they go about it. I know that with the meat, the local butcher I found, I've literally been telling all the people about it. Like anytime I start talking about food, like in real life, I'm like, oh, by the way, I found this amazing butcher shop in Wheat Ridge. You've got to go try it. And like that kind of thing. The word of mouth is like some of the best like advertisements we can do. We have to do like in real life, not just on the Black Mirror and like, you know, for the online purposes, because like my videos get shot out all over the world. I want to tell people that are in my neighborhood, hey, go to this place, try this thing out. And so like that kind of thing also builds connections and deals. Now we're hitting our last 20 minutes, and I think it's going to take about that long to get through our last words. I want to, first of all, start off by saying thank you once again to everybody who's been in the conversation today. I could not have done this without you. It has been fantastic. This will be up on YouTube for anybody who wants to check it out. And on that note, I'm going to go down this time. So we're going to go just like straight down with some last words. Remember that ethical consumption is a big umbrella term, and we've discussed a lot of different things. And we've discussed some stuff that was tangentially related, but it's all one big conversation. And I'm really glad that, and I really thank y'all for being here. So Lawrence, you get the privilege of starting us off for last words.
Last words. Thank you for having me. It's been a wonderful dialogue. I didn't get to really touch on Farm Fresh 24/7, which is an app that is free to download, free to post. It is our way to have a digital cooperative, again, with that intentionality behind it and that access barrier removed. Again, this is where we're meeting local growers, bakers, and makers in our area. We're getting to procure our goods directly from people on that peer-to-peer transaction. We're encouraging that prosumerism. So as we're buying things, we're also tapping back into those same entities to educate us on those proceeds. So I'm not only buying the bread, but now I'm organizing with that bread maker to, hey, can you facilitate a class so that you can express it to our whole community? That aspect of Farm Fresh is called collectively sustainable, and that's our grassroots movement, where we are organized within the culture of prosumerism and that intentionality with spending with one another. And that's how we are utilizing the app to create our 50-mile radius cooperative. So now we can have our own markets in our backyards and invite the people who we procured our goods from to come here and set up shop. Again, having that sovereignty. So I appreciate the chance to spread the message. Again, Farm Fresh 24/7 is free to download, Apple and Google. And if you would like to get into the movement even further, more intentionally, you can join Collectively Sustainable. It's $5 a month. And we have a whole proof of concept in place to where our $5 is organized structurally to support our market, which is Farm Fresh. But then furthermore, we're going with that $5 and we're creating our educational structures and paying these people who are organized enough to present the education. So I appreciate it.
Quick question. Do you have a spot for recipes?
On the app, no, we never even thought about that. I never considered it. I'm more so intentionally like we removed the payment gateway. We removed a lot of the conveniences so that we are forced to use each other as a resource. And so rather than posting a recipe, I more encourage somebody to, hey, can you do a demonstration of how you made that? Can people come convene at this local park and we organize it in such a way where you can showcase the recipe and people can old school write it down and be in that synergy of creation.
If you have a developer and you have the ability to create recipes, then you also have the ability to coordinate resources that have various measurement capacities. So the ability to create a recipe website means that you also have the ability to do talent management, which is like one of those things that people wouldn't necessarily think about, but something that I suspect about why there are so many recipe websites that have terrible user experiences is because it's a good opportunity to demonstrate skills as a web developer, and the process of coordinating everybody who would contribute a recipe is actually kind of difficult. So as a portfolio project, recipe sites are probably pretty good, and they probably are the reason why there are so many. And then you can just add ads and then make the user experience terrible for people who aren't in the network. Then that's a reason to get people in the network so you can show them, look how terrible this experience was. Don't you want to be in this space where it's not terrible? And so I think that's why there are so many recipe websites. But as a community organization reason and basis, if there is a space that has produce and there is community that has cultural motivations to share food, because like making sauces has been tremendously helpful for describing my philosophy with my family, because it's like we can take the ends of that vegetable, we don't need to eat it literally, we can cook it down and it can contribute these flavors, and then we use the entire plant instead of just like the skin.
Solid, solid. I love that so much. It's such a great, great metaphor for many things. We're going to go ahead and continue on down with last words now. Wagon, if you would be so kind. Thank you again for joining us today.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. Like, again, sorry that Dad showed up just as I was planning on jumping on here, so there was the equipment noises in the background for a while. But no, I appreciate you having me and allowing me to contribute a little bit to this. And I just think that anybody, can and should get involved in some small way, shape, or form, in any way that they feel is not going to burn them out. Because I think that that's also one of the huge things is people get involved and, you're always gung-ho, like when you're like, all right, I'm going to do this, and you get into it and you overdo it and you get burned out, and then you have no motivation to do anymore. So just getting involved in small ways where you can make a little bit of an impact, and that becomes part of your just regular life and your routine, and you can add on to that. And continue to get that community involvement, make it easier to find those resources and consume, ethically and whatnot. And just talk to the other people in your community about those things so they know how they can do it as well in ways that isn't going to burn them out. And, a bunch of people doing a little thing is better than one person trying to do everything. So.
Word. Well said. Well said. Thank you, my friend. David, I'm going to have you up for last words, sir. I want to, again, thank you for being here. I appreciate you taking the time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tripp, and I appreciate everybody's participation and everybody's engagement in the spaces where you are making a difference. You are the difference makers. Everybody up here are the difference makers. I know everybody's doing work in their individual circles of influence, and I'm grateful for that, and I appreciate that. With all of my frustrations, I still, believe that I haven't lost hope that positive change can happen. It's going to require citizen reform. It's going to require that good people do something, because evil doesn't succeed because bad people do bad things. Evil succeeds when good people do nothing. And so what we are doing at Smith Foundation, we've got 10 programs that we produce, from community engagement to political engagement to youth mentoring, personal development, community building. We do the work. And so our mantra is doing nothing is not an option. And we're going to continue to recruit and encourage people to do this work. We, you can find more information at my YouTube channel and also at my TikTok for specifics. And that's what we can do.
Right on, man.
Thanks
I really
for having me.
appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here again. Michael, if you have a moment to say some words, will you unmute yourself? I know you're working, so I don't want to disrupt you.
The heads
Final
up,
words, my friend.
I am here. We offer, thank you for everybody for having me. Thank you all for everybody for spending this time and doing the work. We offer so much information on our website. We are trying to bring the market or bring activism, whatever you want to call it, architecture, community building, sanity. I'll just leave it right there. We're trying to bring sanity, or at least reason and logic, back into the mainstream as how we operate in these societies. We feature other activists' work. We feature a lot of activists in the cascade or the array or spectrum of activism. So we got 24-hour Farm Fresh 24 hours up there. And we have so many other activists that deserve the world's attention, because I have meticulously gone out and found these activists. When I first came in here, you guys were talking about people walking around the communities and doing a critique on their communities. There's a gentleman named Pedestrian Dignity, and a platform on TikTok and in general named Pedestrian Dignity, and he turns pedestrian concepts and topics into poetry. But that background I have right there is how I'm going to wrap up my whole point, or my send off. We've been trying to develop an activism directory where people who have trades, skills, availabilities, anything that they can contribute, and what they would, be implied that they would want to receive for that. We are forming that. For instance, I'm looking for people who know how to make shirts and do graphic designs for shirts and stuff like that, and have it streamlined so whoever likes to do it, whoever wants to do it, whoever has the availability to do it. And this is just one of the things on a list. Obviously, I put this in ABC order. There's a much longer list. But just getting out there and actually identifying what people's passions and skill sets are, and then imploring them to a place where them doing what they love can benefit you, you can benefit them, you can benefit the world. But and that also goes back to ethical consumption in the sense that, because we also feature on our website a bunch of businesses that are either zero waste and ethical, or to the extent that that is possible. So I would ask that if anybody knows of any businesses, even if it's just your friends, if they're businesses and they're zero waste or as close to zero waste and ethically sourced as possible, please inform us of that. So basically, Evolving Seeds, our platform, is using, like the other person just said, using the fact that none of us can do all of this, but all of us can do all of this. We can
Right.
Make that change. So if you guys can inform us of any small businesses that you patronize that are zero waste, if you can inform us of any activists that you know who are making strides at what they're doing, from environmentalism to social justice to actual scientific discovery and community building, please let us know. We also offer free books on our website and free freedom quizzes.
Thank you, Michael. Much appreciated. I say there's a lot of really great resources to be had. And I know I have a list of companies that I have found in my area that I need to send to you to update the site. I appreciate that. And we're going to go ahead and move on to Spawshi. Final words, sir. Thank you for being here and offering your thoughts.
I honestly think that I probably have said them. Actually. Thanks for the space.
Yeah, no worries, man. Thanks for being here. Tony, that means it's your turn to say your final words. Let me get you up here. Again, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
I love all of you. And in your own lanes and in your own way and in your own circles, you are doing the work that is needed because it needs to be done on so many levels. Helping people get over their own fears and traumas and insecurities, learning how to love themselves and one another, how to build community, and how to do all of these things. There is no more important job, in my opinion, here in civilization. The one thing I'll add, I guess maybe that hasn't been talked about, and it kind of piggybacks off of what Spawshi said about sauces and flavors, is it was a slow process for me, learning how to consume less and how to waste less. And it started with a rotisserie chicken for me. Someone told me, hey, you can make your own bone broth, right? Like, you can make your own veggie broth, right? Like, you know how to do this stuff, right? And I was like, no. Like, I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. But it's been a slow process over about 20 years of being in a kitchen. I started when I was about 19, burning things, undercooking chicken, overcooking chicken, under-seasoning chicken, but I blame my European heritage for that. But at the end of the day, it's been a slow process of understanding, like, oh, I can save all the tops and wasteful parts of my onions and my carrots and my peppers and my garlic, like all of these things. You keep them in a bag in the freezer, and when it's time, you dump them in the pot, you boil them, you make sure you have some cheesecloth or something like it, and you can make your own broth. But you have to give yourself the grace to fuck it up quite a bit, and to burn some food and to ruin some groceries and stuff. But that's just, I think it really, ethical consumption, it's a huge topic, but it starts with food. It is the single most important thing that we do consume every single day. And as long as we're trusting these faraway agencies that are deforesting the Amazon, clearing way for agricultural farms and things like that, it don't matter who's sitting in the Oval Office. Because somebody's going to be sitting there when we actually have to pay the fucking ticket for what's been happening to our planet because of this stuff. So to me, food is the greatest thing we can talk about. And there's a great deal of information and people on this panel that can help us learn what to do with our food, where to get it, how to get the most out of it. And I think that's a journey that even if you're not into politics, even if you're not into any of this other stuff that we've talked about here, before I burn my pancake, it needs flipped. Even if you're not into that other stuff, I know for a fact you're into food because you fucking need it. So I love you. Thanks for being here. Thanks to everybody for sharing your brain. And don't give up, ever.
Well said. Bravo. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for being on the panel today. We're just going to go ahead and say goodbye. Thanks, everybody. Love ya. Take care. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. That was 2 hours, guys, of an amazing conversation about ethical consumption. For those of you who are just joining us, don't worry. I'm going to be posting the whole thing to YouTube, so that way, because like there's a whole bunch of people that are usually hanging out with me on Wednesday nights that couldn't be here on Tuesday mornings. So like I totally understand. I want to thank everybody who's followed along, much appreciated, and I hope y'all followed along some of the amazing panelists that I had up. That was ethical consumption. The next one, 2 weeks from now, is going to be education for all, and I'm super excited to have some panelists up. Thank you once again to everybody who's been here. I look forward to the next one. And yeah, until next time, be well, fellow citizens.